Now, when you talk about the business valuation, first you have to understand what exactly the business is. When you talk about energy infrastructure, it has a very inherent nature to it. First of all, they're highly capital intensive. Number one, they do have a long gestation period, so that it takes certain time to mature. You get some time to get to generate revenue. Third, it is highly regulated. There is a lot of role the government has to play. Fourth, it is highly in terms of political. Let's say if we talk about energy sector, it's highly politicized. It has some political interest also. So considering all these 4 5 things, then there are the last thing, there's a big larger players who participate in this. So they keep on acquiring the smaller players. So more amount of consolidation keep on happening in this sector. So considering all these 5 points, now the valuation becomes a very different ball game.
Hey guys, welcome back to the 101 session with the thought leader today. And once again, we have a new thought leader, a new face with us. His name is Abhinav Sen Gupta. Abhinav is the new thought leader on Seco. And before I actually introduce him, since he's sharing the screen right beside me, so Abhinav, why don't you take 2 to 3 minutes and introduce yourself as to who is Abhinav Sen Gupta?
Thank you, Siddharth. Thank you all. Okay, I am Abhinav Sen. I born and brought up in Ajmer, Rajasthan. My both parents belong to a government jobs, so I have been working in a mining environment. I have seen them working in a mining jobs. They both were the central government employee. So we studied in Rajasthan, hinterland of Rajasthan, vernacular medium. I have grown and brought up. And apart from that, as I was doing, it intrigued my interest to pursue more towards engineering. So I did my engineering in mining from NIT Nagpur, and post that I did some job, and then after that I again got into an MBA from School of Petroleum Management, and since then I've continuously serving the mining and mineral sector for last almost 10 years, and this basically a very short period of time. I have evolved as what I am as of now today. So my other interest, apart from being into an avid reader, is playing cricket. So apart from playing cricket, playing indoor games, watching movies, traveling, there are a few of my other interests. And after it, I've started, writing blogs. So that's how. That's it. Thanks.
Awesome, great. So really glad to actually have you, Abhinav. This is the first time that we actually, to be very honest, have someone with an expertise and the journey that you shared from a mining specific domain. So all the questions that we have, these are going to be brand new for the Seco platform, and I'm sure that this is definitely going to be useful for the audience out there. So to start right away, Abhinav, so like you said, we have like a sort of a surprise round prepared. This is the rapid fire round. So they would be like simple 5 questions based on your professional life, and you just have to answer them whatever comes the first thing to your mind in the next 2 to 5 seconds. So you ready?
Thank you. Okay, I'll ready.
All right, cool. So the first one that I have, Abhinav, is one lesson from your professional life that you learned the hard way. What was it?
Okay, the basic lesson is that education doesn't matter. It's all your skills that helps.
Nice, great. So the second one is, given a chance to partner with a famous business tycoon, who would you prefer working with?
I prefer working with Mukesh Ambani because
Oh,
I have seen him closely because he's been the part of my MBA college curriculum. He was the trustee of the company. Yes.
awesome. Great. So moving on to the next one, one movie or a book or maybe even a quote which inspired your steps in shaping your career.
Time can change anytime. I mean, time can change anytime. That's the only thing which I believe.
That's a very powerful one in itself. I agree to this. Great. So moving on to the fourth one, if you were asked to clear one misconception of your domain, what would you like to clarify?
Uh, there's plenty of things to do in the sector. You need not worry about it. Just need to open your eyes and see. That's it.
Nice. Great. So the last one that I have for you is the next big thing planned in your career ahead.
I want myself to be, one of the thought leaders in the country in terms of policy making of the sector.
Nice. Then in that case, probably, this could be a launching pad wherein we can definitely help you, becoming a thought leader. So great, Abhinav. We have successfully ended the rapid fire. Thank you so much. Your answers were spot on and crisp and precise. So now we are moving into the main discussion. So to start with, these entire talking points that we have, I'll go through one by one, and then you can share about your insights, basis on your journey and expertise. Now, since Seco primarily focuses on micro learning, so I would love if you can actually, try to frame those answers in like 2 to 3 minutes. That would actually help us to, package it well and then present it to the audience.
Fair enough.
Great. So the first one, Abhinav, that I have is what new perspectives have you actually gained as a result of your experience so far? Since you mentioned that you have been in this domain for like almost a decade. So what are the new things and new bases on your experience that you have actually gained throughout that experience?
Okay, so first and foremost thing, since I have started my career into consulting directly right away from my engineering college, so what I have learned is that as you proceed along, it's a skill set that you need to build on. Your education, your qualifications remains one part, but something skills you need to have some tangible skill set. When I ask about skill set, when I tell about skill set, it's only tangible skill set which you can showcase to anybody at any point of time, whether it's handy with the AutoCAD tool or working with a Microsoft Excel. Those skills number one. Second thing, having a well read about the subject matter, or at least about your country or about your domain helps you a lot. And last third thing, which I could believe that changed my perspective in this, that networking keeps on help you out. So apart from knowledge and skills, you need to keep on networking. So if these three things combine, it changes the entire thing for you. Doesn't matter from which tier one college or tier two college you belong to. Doesn't matter how affluent family you belong to. If you have these three things and that attitude about it, then you can definitely make it. So this is the only thing, this is the major impact which I think it will help somebody going ahead in his career.
I agree, and I specifically agree with you on the networking part. Usually, people actually do not, I would say, pursue that specific bit, but I think that in itself plays a very important role in a professional career, in a professional's life. So I am completely agreeing with you on that part. So the next one, Abhinav, that I have is if you can help us understand as to what is competitive bidding.
Okay, so competitive bidding is kind of an arrangement where you have more players on one platform, and then they are fighting for certain thing. Let's say in the current scenario, you have government projects. So government, when they offer you something, it has to be in a transparent manner. So in this case, you ask for bidders to participate in that, and those bidders in that frame or back that job or that tender or that work or that services, either it can be anything, they participate in a structured manner. So the manner in which they participate, that is called bidding. And when it becomes more for competition, it becomes competitive bidding. So if I can give you a simple example, let's say road tender floats, and there are a number of, let's say NHIS has floated a road tender where some EPC player might come in and they participate in a road tender. So let's say 5-6 people come and they participate. So the kind of bid they submitted, the financial quote they have quoted for that particular stretch of the building that road, that becomes competitive. And whosoever will be competent enough in terms of price and as well as competence will be. So that is called competitive.
Thank you so much for that. I really liked how you actually, placed it with an example and you crisply mentioned it. So, really like the answer. Moving on to the next one, Abhinav, is, so like I said to you in the very beginning that, this is all together, since you are coming from that expertise, we have never had someone from this domain. So, would love to hear your insights primarily on this eco aspect. So, how are business valuations derived in the energy sector?
Okay, so there's no specific answer to it. Now, when you talk about the business valuation, first you have to understand what exactly the business is. When you talk about energy infrastructure, it has a very inherent nature. First of all, they're highly capital intensive. Number one, they do have a long gestation period, so that it takes certain time to mature. You will get some time to get to generate revenue. Third, it is highly regulated. There's a lot of role the government has to play. Fourth, it is highly in terms of political. Let's say if you talk about energy sector, it's highly politicized. It has some political interest also. So considering all these 4-5 things, then there are the last thing, there's a big larger players who participate in this. So they keep on acquiring the smaller players. So more amount of consolidation keep on happening in this sector. So considering all these 5 points, now the valuation becomes a very different ball game. Let's say an example of Air India. Now Air India is going to get acquired, and now it's going to get divested. So they are going to value that on the basis of enterprise value. So that's a different concept. Now we talk about mining asset or mineral assets which are going to acquire, that's going to getting acquired on the basis of net present value. And there are certain things, let's talk in terms of oil and gas assets, which the people are bidding for small oil and gas field. It's completely on the basis of the actual market pricing, what price they will get once they bid for that oil. So it depends on which sector you're working on. But the prima facie, with the reason which I have gave, it makes it very interesting as well as complex in terms of. So there's no fixed method. Yes, it keeps on evolving based on which sector you're participating into and what arrangement the government has kept for you.
Got it. Got it. This is actually a little new for me, so I must, plead guilty over here. But I'm learning a new things from you, so really looking forward to the entire discussion going ahead. So, Abhinav, the next one is basis about two things: energy and infrastructure sector. Yes, but about digitalization. So the talking point over here is that if you can help us as to how has digitalization changed the energy and infrastructure sector as per you?
Okay, so now there is a very common misconception about digitalization. Digitalization has been there in our whole context since 1970. Soon after the Industrial Three Revolution, there are four industrial revolutions which has happened. So way back in 1970, with the evolution of computers, there has been a digital part of it. But as in 2016, when your new conference which held at Davos, then they have coined a term called Industry 4.0, where you have more of a human as well as machine interaction. That is called actual digitalization. So now it is changing the entire spectrum of all energy infrastructure domain. But I must say, going forward, this is going to be an integral part of it. Now we are seeing it as from a side view or different perspective, that a particular sector has to be digitalized. Okay, so you ask me about specifically what does it mean. So I'll give you a simple example. Let's talk about the power sector. Now in a power sector, when you input some kind of digital implementation solution, then you have for our consumer that we are paying our bills through mobile. Automatically the meter reading gets calculated through smart readers, through your smart meters. Timely bills get generated. In case of any outage which happened, it automatically get rectified. You have IVR system, just call them up. There's a chat bot, you call them up, and automatically once you call them up, it will give you all the details. Your power has gone from this time to this time. That is the concept now they are bringing in. So, and when you work on field, actually, let's say on a power plant, then it comes of data-lize aspect is that the people are the workers, they're having the healthcare monitoring, that what kind of impact they are having in terms of working in that plants or in that toxic environment. In terms of automation of command and control, part of the entire plant is being monitored to one place so that you can remotely monitor without going into this. Drones have been used to survey. So this all small and bits and pieces form a part of data, including your cloud system. Everything is on the cloud. So it has 5 components. It has sensors, it has IoTs, it has cloud, it has it has then a human interaction also. So this forms a part.
Definitely. So, in other words, how you actually mentioned is digitalization has actually changed almost the entire sector in itself. It has made it far more accessible. Correct. So, moving on to the next one, this is actually primarily related to what we just covered a little bit about bidding. But at the same point in time, if you can help us understand as to how to actually be how to be efficient at report writing.
Okay, so now report writing is something which is a skill, and it gets evolved with the process of time. So report writing has different connotation. Let's say I'm a student at one point of time, then I'm participating or I'm writing for my project. This kind of report writing. When I'm working in a corporate and I'm submitting my proposals, or I'm trying to do some investor in terms of gaining some kind of funding, then it's a different kind of report writing. So report writing has a first of all, the text of the report has to be a very structured in a logical manner. They should have a coherence in it. Either it has to be a deductive approach or inductive approach based on what you want to convey the idea. It should be devoid of any grammatical mistakes. So it comes only after practice and practice. And the best part is try to make sure that you convey your idea in a very crisp and precise manner to the reader. So that's the best part of report writing. And yes, it's a skill and it gets evolved. It gets on time by time. So that's how it is.
So, like you mentioned, it's not like anyone is you can do the sort of an expertise and gain the expertise. It's more of you do it, you practice, and then you
Yes.
enhance that skill. Got
Yeah.
it. Great. So the next one, Abhinav, is as to what are some of the common input parameters used for techno-economic analysis in the energy sector. If you could share some insights over here.
Okay, so when we talk about energy and infrastructure sector, it's a big domain. It completes, one part is energy where you have source of like oil and gas, power, nuclear, renewables. When you talk about infra, it has different like public utilities like your sewage treatment, your airports, your roads, your transportation, your storage systems. It's a big domain. So when you talk about the KPI for the techno economic, for the techno economic analysis, you have to understand the KPI which sector you're talking about. So there are certain KPIs which are very much pertinent to a particular industry specific. Now, energy infrastructure is a big sector. Then there are a number of industry which I just mentioned. So industry specific, there are certain KPIs. You need to understand, you need to evaluate which KPIs are impacting both technically and the financial. Financial KPIs are more or less remain the same because balance sheets, cash flow statement, and profit and loss, they all remain same across the entire thing. So they might remain the same. But in terms of technical KPI, that how I judge my sector is performing, you need to understand those KPI. You have to delineate those KPI and try to benchmark in terms of what is the best practice, and try to find the viability considering those KPI into the financial. Then only it get. Let's say I'll give you a small example. Let's say talk about mining in the mining sector. So in mining sector, if I want to do a techno-economic analysis of a particular mineral asset, which is somewhere found, let's say limestone mineral asset been found, and I need to do the techno-economic analysis. I need to simply understand that at what depth my limestone is occurring, whether it is enough viable for me. If I put enough amount of money, that will come out and will give me that yield. Then there is any kind of regulatory aspects to it that will avoid me of not doing the mining in the right correct manner. What are the statutory compliances, and apart from that, what kind of investment I will having, and at what payback period I'll try to recover my money. So based on all this, I'll get on certain numbers through my techno-economic analysis. Based on that, my bank will say, okay, that since this is a highly capital intensive project, you will be requiring certain amount of funds. So once you do all the analysis, the viability of project gets established, then only it will proceed. Right? So that's how you do it. It's just an example for mining I took. So it's a very subjective instance. You cannot cover that in a short manner. But yes, once you keep on doing in industry by industry, it keeps on changing. So that's how it is.
Got it. So the next one, Abhinav, is it's a little more towards what we are seeing, the green revolution, which is actually slowly and steadily building its pace up. So this is a little curious question too. So would love to hear about this too. As to, is it actually possible to completely switch to green energy, or will we still need the traditional sources some way or the other? So what would you like to probably highlight over here?
Okay, so I'll start answering this with a disclaimer that my thoughts are completely personal and which has nothing to do with the industrial sector. See, understand the thing. Since the last old ages, we are basically a conventional fossil fuels based economy where you have huge amount of fossil fuel reserve. And India has been. I'll talk about the Indian perspective only. So India has been evolved over the years since post-independence in terms of fossil fuel. Number of evolutions have been made. New technologies have been folded into. Globalization has come into. So they have gained ground. Now all of a sudden, if you ask to bring in the green revolution, understanding that there is a climate concern over it, there's a concept of net zero emissions, there's a concept of increasing the temperature. I do understand that this will make an impact, but the quantum of energy which you generate through fossil fuels helps maintain the base load of any system. Let's say in the electricity system, it gives you a certain amount of energy without energy storage, because electricity cannot be stored. Now the systems are coming that you need to store it. When you change it to a renewable, renewables are very intermittent in nature. You cannot have sun all the time. You don't have sun at the night time. You don't have winds flying all the time continuously. Even for that matter, you have now hydrogen based economies are also coming. You're also talking about the cleaner solution like waste to energy, geothermal. They are there, but the magnitude and the intensity is not that high. So it will eventually come up, but going forward, what will happen with the explosion of population, with the people more increasing, the share of pie will increase. So coal is here to stay, oil and gas is here to stay. All the conventional sources will be here to stay, but their share, but overall picture share will be larger. But yes, their share might be diminished, but the overall share of the entire pie of the energy consumption will grow. So you cannot. I mean, you won't be having only renewables. You will be having all of them coexisting. and with the simple premise that you cannot have a clear sky while you have a emptier stomach, because once you completely switch to renewables, the number of people who are being directly or indirectly getting employed into all this conventional sector, where they will go. So it's a huge amount of employment generation also. So it's a mixed thing. So for at least for next 4 5 decades, everything will be here to stay until and this. Yes, the change will be there. It will be very gradual going forward. In let's say in next after 5 decades, there will be a change, but not in very imminent future.
That's a very valid and a very insightful thing, Abhinav. I very much agree with you, specifically on the last point that you just said, that it would be more. I know that this green energy thing has suddenly picked up a lot of hype, but on the contrary, we have to understand that there would be a gradual, flow towards it, and then you can't just expect it to happen probably within the next decade or something like that. So I completely agree with you. So we are almost ending. We are reaching to the end of our one-on-one session questions, and so probably the one more, like I said. So would love to hear again on. We would like to, if you can help us understand, because this is again new, as to what is the main process of, the main purpose of mining, and if you can share a little light for the layman terms as to so that the audience who are not from the field can actually understand what really happens there.
Okay, so I'll tell you about basic in basic sense what mining is actually. Way back, since the evolution of human being, the first activity which they did, apart from building house and apart from discovering fire, the activity which they did is basically mining. So they started honing the stones, and they started digging, because until unless you dig out the minerals, everything you see around yourself, right from buses to semiconductor to your mobile phone to TVs, everything, it all made of minerals. And minerals are not found in a free form; they are found beneath the surface in a complex form. So you need to extract them up, you need to purify them, you need to beneficiate them, and then only a metal can be extracted at a profit, and then it can be used for some end user purpose. So mining is essential. If this is the first activity, if let's say if you go to any other planet, let's say move to moon, or if you move to Mars, the first activity which human evolution will do will mine for the minerals, will search for the minerals, because that is the essential thing. And how mining is done will be very simple. It's something which is beneath the earth. You need to remove the the impurity or the waste or the overburden or the starter, whatever name you like to give it on a layman term. You need to remove it, and then you can extract the minerals. And from that mineral, you have to refine it, you have to purify it, then you can extract the metals out of it, and that in turn will have some end users. So that is a very simple term I can explain to you how and what mining is and why it is important.
That's to be very honest, that's the most simplest and the best way I've actually heard someone actually explaining mining to me. So thank you so much, Abhinav, for that. So so you already sort of touched base on the next question that I had, but again, would love to hear if you would like to elaborate probably on it a minute or two as to what are the major mining techniques used by miners. If you can share a little bit here.
Okay, so basically mining is of two types. First is open cast and second is underground. You must have seen many pictures of mines in any movies where you can see the sun above it. It becomes an open cast mine. It looks like a big excavated area where if you number of equipments are flying over, you can see the sun above it, and then you are extracting the metal. That's one part. The second part is underground mining. You must have seen movies like Kala Patthar or in some foreign movies where where they show you the underground mines where you have a roof over it. So you have a certain roof over it. You wear a cap lamp so that you can see. There's a cap lamp on the head. You can see the minerals. So it's called underground mining. So there are two methods of mining, and it only depends on the economics. How deep is your mineral? So if your mineral strata, whatever the ore body, what is the mineral you are trying to excavate? It is at the shallower depth, which you can do it by economically by the open cast mining. Then you do open cast mining. But if it is a very hard, very deeper depth, you cannot afford doing the digging part directly. Then you have to go for making arrangement of underground mining. That's how the system is. So it's based on the economics. Both the method of mining keeps on changing. And again, I tell you, it's a highly capital intensive and a long gestation period. You cannot go ahead and from the day when you can start extracting the mineral. It takes almost 1 to 2 years to reach the ore body, reach the mineral, and then it comes out. And when it comes out, then you sell the mineral and start making revenue. So that's why it becomes very difficult to choose the right method of mining. And it depends, more or less, it also depends on the number of clearance, because mineral assets are non-replenishable. It takes millions and millions of years to form a particular mineral, any mineral you talk about. So you
Right.
cannot afford wasting them. So you have to conserve them properly. You have to do the efficient kind of mining. So yes, it takes all amount of thing, in terms of statutory compliances, matching up with the right kind of technology, infusion of money, and the market also very good in selling it. So with all these things, it takes certain amount of time to do it.
Got it. So the next question is actually the last question, but this is again interrelated to what we just spoke of. So as you rightly said, that you can't just straight away start mining, and at the same point in time, there are many factors which are related to when you're actually starting to actually go ahead and mine. So if you can help us to understand as to what are the geographical factors to be taken into consideration before someone can actually start mining.
Okay, Siddharth, if you could, if I can ask you, since you asked me what are the geographical consideration. First of all, mineral assets are, their distributions are, it depends upon where they are occur. So it's a very site-specific activity. First of all, you have to understand this. It can occur anywhere. You know, it doesn't matter that I'm sitting in a particular city, and you can find some mineral beneath this also. So first of all, it is a very site-specific activity. So once the geographical consideration is understood, that whether it is, you have a lot of minerals in terms of, a lot of rich coal in terms of Himalayas, they are there in Himalayan region, but you don't excavate because of so many reasons, like environmental concern and right through way of mining. So yes, geographical constraint is there, but in terms of other geographical concerns, you have to consider that what proper infrastructure I can have. I need to have electricity, I need to have a water, I need to have an access road, I need to have a proper manpower in the nearby places, so that I can deploy them for so all this consideration need to take into consideration all these parameters before effectively choosing a particular site for mining. Yes, and what kind of mineral content it contains. Let's say a particular area which is a hinterland has a rich mineral content that I cannot afford losing it. So I'll make sure that proper connectivity, proper infrastructure, roads, rail, all the evacuation facilities should be there at that place. I should make arrangement for them, and then I can start mining. So yes, all these parameters help me, evaluating the proper excavation area. So that's how it becomes very site specific.
Got it. And just an add-on question, Abhinav, since we are almost concluding the 101 session. So, for all the people out there who are actually now wanting to get into mining or probably are trying to pursue their careers into mining, so probably what would your advice be for them? How could they actually, shape up their career and move towards where you are probably right now? If you a little bit of advice for students who are pursuing this as a field.
Okay, so I'll start to answer this. I have seen my parents working in a mineral sector, first of all. So that was one thing. Second thing, I've seen them since birthday. Both of them were in the government employ. They were not actually working in mines, but they were the government employee. And mining is not the it's not the it has never been the first choice for many of the for any of us. People get into the mining sector by default. That's the harsh reality, and that's how it is. But once you get into it, you need to understand in Indian parlance that everything has a scope. If you get into other sectors, there are a lot of competition. Let's say for one job you have 1 million people. Here for one job you have 10 people. So the competition becomes less. Now, once you foray into mining sector, mining is only being taught by the government colleges or the prestigious institutions like IITs, NITs, and few government colleges. It's not there in many of the private colleges. So it has a very specific number of seats in terms of reservation in terms of education. But the sincere advice would be, once you get into the sector, try to understand, because since you're already investing your 4 years, so you cannot afford to lose out your 4 years. Whatever, maybe whether it's an interest or not, but whatever you're studying, my simple funda is that when you're studying something, you're investing money, you're investing time, do justice with it, whether you are interested in pursuing that career or not. Because what happens, it develops your integrity, it develops your attitude towards taking any task. It might happen that after 4 years of mining, you might get into an IT sector job, you're doing different kind of work. But during those 4 years, you have done justice with your subject matter. That will help you evolve as a person. So yes, I would simply advise that, since now it's the age of digital, I would encourage each one of you whosoever is will be working in this sector or any sector for that matter, try to hone their soft skill in terms of getting hands-on with the working software, at least Microsoft tools like Office, PowerPoint, project, access, learn, because now learning is there everywhere. I mean, you get all the freeware open through open access. So learn all those tools. Try to get honed on your communication skills. I belong to a vernacular medium. I started my English learning from standard 6, so that's how I evolved, because I was there in the Rajasthan. So so work on all those skills, and that's how you will be evolving. So that's simple it is. And do justice to whatever you're studying.
Nice. So thank you so much, Abhinav, for that. I'm sure that this advice would definitely help a lot of people who are probably. You actually told a little bit on the the harsh side, but I think still the people who are now obviously wanted to take this up as a career, they can definitely look up to your advice and they can go forward. So that brings us to the end of the one-on-one session. Abhinav, I thoroughly. So like you said, I honestly am not aware that much about the energy and the mining field. But more importantly, the best part was that I'm glad that I was hosting the session because it was a learning session for me as well. And just would like to touch base on one more thing, that the way that you answered those questions in the most crisp and the most simplest way, that was great, because that's what we need for our Seco audience, and that's why the audience actually love coming on Seco. So you just give the precise and the best answers that probably the platform can have. So thank you so much for obviously taking time out and coming in for the one-on-one session.